She was just a single mom serving coffee at a billion-dollar summit, until a translator collapsed and the room fell into chaos. In that moment, she stood up. Fluent in 3 languages, fearless in a room full of power, she saved a $120 million 0-cents deal with nothing but her voice. But that was only the beginning. What started as a crisis became a love story that changed everything. The Westfield International Conference Center shimmered under layers of glass, steel, and prestige. In the heart of Los Angeles, a crowd of over 300 powerful minds from 3 continents had gathered. Heads of state, top investors, tech moguls, and journalists. Each breath held in anticipation of one of the largest diplomatic tech collaborations of the decade. A $120 million deal was on the verge of finalization, hinging on cultural alignment, political finesse, and flawless multilingual communication. On the grand stage, behind curved glass podiums and velvet partitions, the flags of the United States, France, and China fluttered on 3 massive screens. Beneath them sat a half-circle of government representatives and corporate leaders. In the center stood Grant Whitaker, the famously aloof CEO of Whitaker Systems, dressed in charcoal gray tailored perfection, his ice-blue eyes scanning the room like a hawk surveying its territory. The air was tense but orderly. Every sentence he spoke was being translated live, Mandarin to his left, French to his right, by an elite interpreter with 2 decades of experience and the coolness of a spy. Cameras rolled, investors leaned forward. Then it happened. The interpreter's words faltered, his voice cracked mid-phrase. He reached for the podium, gripping the edge like it might anchor him to the earth. But his knees buckled. A sharp cry rang out, and then he collapsed to the floor, convulsing. Panic bloomed like fire. Gasps filled the auditorium. Chairs scraped. Security rushed in. Aides shouted in multiple languages. One delegate tried to translate the final words himself, but failed. The Chinese representative whispered with growing urgency to his French counterpart. Misunderstandings began piling in real time. Grant Whitaker's expression remained unreadable, but a single vein twitched in his jaw. This deal had taken 8 months to build, and it was about to unravel in 30 seconds. From the back of the room, a clear voice called out, "I can translate." Every head turned. A woman stepped forward from the far left aisle. She was not in a suit, not a delegate. She wore a plain black catering blazer and slacks, hair pulled into a practical braid. She carried no notepad, no badge. Only a silver tray she calmly placed on the side table before walking toward the stage. Grant's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I said I can translate," she repeated, this time louder. "French and Mandarin." Some in the audience chuckled nervously. Others pulled out phones, assuming this was some kind of PR stunt. A few even looked annoyed. Then she turned toward the Chinese envoy and said, in flawless Mandarin, "The proposed clause addresses exclusive digital licensing rights for both parties with quarterly metric reviews." The delegate blinked, nodded. She pivoted to the French side and repeated the phrase, adjusting the nuance for legal interpretation. The French minister leaned forward, eyes widening. "Exactement," he whispered to his aide. The room stilled. Then, after a long pause, it moved again. Conversations resumed. Interpreters adjusted. Delegates leaned in once more. And the entire negotiation, worth $120 million, continued, thanks to the woman in the catering uniform standing silently beside the podium. Grant studied her with guarded curiosity. "Who are you?" he asked. She smiled politely. "Just filling in, until your translator recovers." The world did not know her name yet, but they would. The morning sun filtered weakly through the cracked blinds of a small studio apartment on the edge of East Los Angeles. The walls were covered with sticky notes and doodles, half reminders, half dreams, some scrawled in English, others in Spanish, or even Mandarin. A worn coffee mug sat on a windowsill, its chipped side facing inward as if hiding its imperfections. Maya Rivera stirred a pot of oatmeal on the stove with one hand, and tied her daughter's shoelaces with the other. Her hair, dark and soft, was swept into a hasty bun that somehow still framed her face with grace. 32 years old, single, and stunning in that quiet, effortless way. Skin that caught the morning light like honey, eyes full of questions and laughter waiting to burst. She looked at her daughter, Lena, 6 years old and already wise beyond most adults. The little girl sat at their second-hand table, swinging her legs and biting into a bruised apple like it was a feast. She wore a princess shirt and a backpack that was nearly half her size, one strap perpetually slipping. "Do you think birds get tired of flying?" Lena asked between bites. Maya smirked. "I think they get tired of answering questions. Grown-ups always answer with jokes." Maya glanced over. "What would you like me to say instead?" "I want the truth," Lena said, crossing her arms. "Even if it is weird." Maya crouched beside her. "The truth is, birds probably do get tired, but they keep flying anyway, just like us." They walked to school in worn sneakers and matching ponytails. Maya held Lena's hand tighter than necessary at the crossing light, her mind already running through the day ahead. 2 catering shifts, 1 quick gig picking up dry cleaning for an elderly woman, maybe a language tutoring session later if the student did not cancel again. She had studied languages, majored in linguistics, with a dream of becoming an interpreter for the United Nations. French, Mandarin, Spanish, Italian, words had always been her magic. But when she found out she was pregnant, her junior year fell apart. Her scholarship vanished, so did the boyfriend. Now instead of translating for diplomats, she translated flavor notes for guests at upscale events. Served coffee to tech executives too busy to look her in the eye. "Do not spill on the investors," one event planner had sneered that morning. "They are allergic to poverty." It stung, but Maya had learned to smile at insults, smile and make jokes. It was safer than trying to fight everyone's assumptions. Just another pretty single mom, they thought. Temporary, disposable. She blended into service uniforms like wallpaper, present, functional, silent. Yet even in silence, her mind was alive. She noticed accents, postures, coded glances. She heard the cadence of power and the awkwardness of translated apologies. She stored it all in her head, like a mental archive nobody cared about. But Lena did. "Do grown-ups forget how to dream?" Lena had asked her once, curled under the blanket after Maya read her a bedtime story in 2 languages. "I do not think we forget," Maya whispered. "I think we are just too tired." But Maya never let Lena see that part. She danced in the kitchen with her, made sock puppets from old clothes, helped her create entire fantasy worlds with just paper and tape. To Lena, the world was still magical, and Maya's job was to protect that wonder at all costs. That morning, as she stood in the catering hall of a luxury hotel, holding a silver tray of imported pastries, she barely noticed the camera crews setting up or the international banners being unfurled. She was used to these kinds of gigs. Serve, smile, disappear. She did not know yet that by the end of the day, the world would know her name. Back at the conference, the temperature inside the Grand Horizon ballroom dropped several degrees, despite the Los Angeles sun blazing outside. The chandelier-lit space, packed with international dignitaries, investors, translators, and public relations teams, had fallen into a stunned, uneasy silence. On stage stood Grant Whitaker, mid-40s, razor-sharp jawline, tailored navy suit, the man who had turned a small Silicon Valley startup into a tech empire worth billions. The man who never missed a deadline, a decimal point, or a deal. His reputation for control and precision was both feared and respected. But in that moment, even Grant looked unmoored. The interpreter, hired specifically for this 3-party deal, had collapsed mid-sentence during a tense moment in negotiations between the American, Chinese, and French delegates. One hand still clutched their notes as medics rushed in, whispering about low blood sugar and exhaustion. Cameras stopped rolling, delegates exchanged anxious glances, a murmur rolled across the room like thunder. The Chinese minister turned to his aide confused, The French ambassador tapped her mic twice, frowning. Grant stepped forward and raised both palms. "Everyone," he said tightly, "we will resume shortly. Please, give us a moment." He was bluffing. He did not speak Mandarin. His French was passable at best. And the stakes? 120 million United States dollars. Months of prep. Years of relationship building, all unraveling in real time. The room buzzed with unease. Executives whispered. The translator's collapse had created a vacuum of language, of trust, of leadership. Too late now. That is when a voice rose from the far side of the ballroom. "I can help." Clear, calm, crisp. Heads turned. From behind a catering station near the back wall, a woman stepped forward. Slim figure, dark hair pulled back, wearing a modest black server's uniform. Maya. A clipboard still hung from her apron. A single water glass on her tray reflected the stage lights like a spotlight. Security stirred. One guard began moving forward. Grant narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" Maya held her chin high. "I am fluent in Mandarin, French, and English. I heard the last segment. I can continue." The French ambassador arched a brow. The Chinese delegate raised his phone, ready to verify. The room held its breath. Grant shook his head slightly, annoyed. "This is a billion-dollar negotiation. We do not have time for theatrics." Maya took one step forward. Then she calmly repeated the last full line the collapsed translator had attempted, switching fluidly between Mandarin and French, then concluding in precise, polished English. The pause that followed was thick enough to cut. Then, something unexpected happened. The French ambassador nodded. "That is correct." The Chinese representative said something to his aide, then gestured for her to approach the mic. Grant looked from one official to the next, then at her. "You are sure?" "I have degrees in 3 of the languages spoken here," Maya said, "and I understand the deal structure from the slide deck you presented earlier. I read it during setup." That made Grant flinch. "You were not supposed to read that." "I did not mean to," she said, "but it was on the big screen." Silence. Then finally Grant said, "Fine, translate." The rest of the meeting moved like a miracle. Maya stood at the edge of the stage, translating with uncanny poise, switching between languages, like a symphony conductor changing tempo. She clarified cultural idioms, bridged conceptual gaps, even made a few delegates laugh, without ever breaking the rhythm of dialogue. The deal that had teetered on collapse began to rebuild. Grant barely spoke, only watching her with a mix of suspicion and reluctant awe. By the end of the hour, he looked like a man seeing fire for the first time. And when the final signatures were made, applause rippled across the room, not just for the deal, but for the woman no one had noticed when she served the coffee. Maya nodded once and stepped back into the shadows. But Grant Whitaker would not forget her name again. By mid-afternoon, Maya Rivera's face had been posted across every major news feed. Headlines flashed across television screens in the press room outside the Global Conference Center. Caterer saves $120 million 0 cent, deal with 1 sentence. Mystery woman stuns tech world with multilingual heroics. Fluent, fearless, and wearing an apron. But the internet is never kind for long. Right, one tweet read. "No broke single mom just casually speaks fluent Mandarin, give me a break." Another post with thousands of likes. "If she was that smart, why is she carrying food trays?" A gossip forum picked apart her looks. "Bet she's dating the CEO or wants to." Maya tried to ignore it. She had returned to her small shared dressing area backstage to change out of her catering uniform, but her fingers trembled. Her phone buzzed non-stop, her notifications overwhelming, some praise, some venom, all loud. Meanwhile, inside the boardroom, Grant Whitaker's inner circle was in chaos. "He's a liability," one senior advisor said flatly. "Media exposure, no clearance, no resume." "She just closed a 12-country clause with 0 prep," another countered. "That is not a fluke." Grant sat silent, reviewing the security footage of Maya's impromptu translation. Her posture, her poise, the way her voice carried clarity and command without arrogance. There was no hesitation in her delivery, no fear in her eyes. A knock on the door interrupted the debate. "Miss Rivera is here," said a junior staffer, "for the post-debrief." The room quieted. Moments later, Maya stepped in, not in a uniform this time, but in a clean navy blouse and black slacks borrowed from another server. She had tied her hair back, her expression unreadable. Confident, but tired. Beautiful, but guarded. Grant nodded curtly. "Miss Rivera?" She returned the nod. "Mr. Whitaker?" The room watched. Tension simmered just beneath the surface. Grant asked her a few clarifying questions about the dialogue she had interpreted. She answered calmly, offering precise linguistic rationale behind her translations. No show, no ego, just skill. And then, it happened. As reporters began filtering into the adjacent press room, a diplomatic representative from the French delegation picked up the preliminary copy of the signed agreement and blanched. A clause regarding data privacy had been worded too broadly, suggesting U.S. firms could retain sensitive user data overseas. A firestorm ignited within seconds. "Ce n'était pas ce que nous avons accepté," the man barked. "This is not what we agreed to." A translator scrambled to respond. An assistant dropped her clipboard. Reporters turned. Cameras swiveled. Grant's hands clenched. The room began to spin with noise and legal shouting. Then, Maya stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said gently, her voice clear as a bell. All eyes landed on her again. This time the scrutiny was tenfold. "The clause you are referring to," she said in fluent French, "was a placeholder. It should have read, 'Data collected on users within sovereign territory shall be subject to that territory's privacy laws.'" The diplomat paused, stunned. "That is exactly right." Maya turned to the American side and translated fluently, ensuring the adjustment was understood and documented. The legal teams rushed to update the language. The entire room exhaled at once. Applause broke out in waves, spontaneous and sincere. Someone from the European contingent murmured, "She just saved the deal again." Grant stared at her as if seeing her for the very first time, not just as the woman who had stood on the fringes of the conference, not just the unlikely translator, but as someone unshakably brilliant. His voice dropped low. "Stay," he said quietly, almost to himself. Maya blinked. "Excuse me?" He cleared his throat. "We may need you for the next round." She raised one brow, her signature smirk returning just for a second. "Well, I charge overtime." The room laughed. Even Grant almost smiled. The morning after the press debacle turned triumph, Maya found herself sitting at a high-gloss marble table in one of the private conference rooms of Whitaker Global. She had not meant to return. She had intended to go back to her regular shifts, maybe pick up a few extra hours in catering, maybe tutor high schoolers in Spanish if she could find time between rent deadlines and school pickups. But then the call came. Not from an assistant. From Grant Whitaker himself. She almost declined out of reflex, but curiosity had a louder voice. Now here she was, seated across from the famously unsmiling billionaire, with his sleeves rolled and his watch glinting in the morning light. "I want you to consult for our team," he said plainly. Maya blinked. "You want me to what?" "Our USA design is full of cultural blind spots. Our translation team lacks nuance. Our diplomatic tone is robotic. I want your voice on this. Your instincts." She crossed her arms. "Because I happen to speak 3 languages and wore an apron while doing it?" He met her stare. "Because yesterday, when the room fell apart, you held it together, with elegance, with precision. That kind of presence. My team rehearsed for 3 months and could not deliver it." She shook her head slowly. "I do not want pity. I am not your charity case of the month." "You are not," he said evenly. "You are a professional who saved a $120 million deal and made it look easy." Silence stretched between them. Then, dryly, Maya said, "You always talk like a TED Talk?" He blinked. For a moment, he was not CEO Grant Whitaker, global tech leader. He was just a man. Slightly stunned, slightly amused. "No. Only when I am being challenged." "Then get used to it," she said, already rising to leave. "Wait," he said, smiling for the first time, "just barely. What would it take?" She paused. "No special treatment. No hand-holding. I get paid for my value. I earn it, or I walk." "Agreed," he said without hesitation. And just like that, Maya was part of the team. It started as a temporary consultancy, a 2-week trial, but from the first hour, it was clear she was different. She did not speak in jargon or fluff. She asked uncomfortable questions that no one else dared. She pointed out tone-deaf ad copy in Mandarin. She explained why French clients preferred indirect negotiation styles. She even rewrote half the onboarding script to make it more inclusive and human. At first, the team was skeptical. Then they were stunned. By the third day, they started listening. But it was not just her work that made an impact. It was her presence. She had a sharp tongue but a gentle core. She teased Grant in front of the others, once mockingly asking if his $5,000 Italian loafers could survive a New York subway. Another time she adjusted a graphic on the presentation slide and quipped, "There, now it actually speaks human." Grant, usually intolerant of irreverence, let her do it. More than that, he seemed to enjoy it. Lena became a regular sight at the office too. On days when Maya could not arrange childcare, the little girl sat quietly at the corner table of the innovation room, drawing in bright markers on post-it notes. The staff loved her. Even the most serious executives began taping her doodles to their cubicle walls. Grant's tablet, once pristine and untouched, soon had a yellow sticky note stuck to the back, a smiling stick figure in a suit labeled, "Mr. Serious, but not mean." He never removed it. At night, Maya would return home exhausted but strangely lighter. For the first time in years, her brilliance was not something she had to hide or apologize for. Still, she kept one eye open. This world of suits and silent boardrooms could shift without warning. She knew the ceiling she was up against. Glass, sharp-edged, always ready to cut. But for now, she had carved a space. Not by begging, not by pretending. She had walked in, uninvited, and proved she belonged. Maya's rise within Whitaker Global was too fast, too visible. And in boardrooms where egos were currency, that kind of momentum came with a price. Jealousy. It started subtly, a cold glance from a senior strategist when Maya's name was mentioned in a meeting, a few accidental calendar changes that caused her to miss key briefings, whispers in the elevator. Then it escalated. One morning, the trending page of a popular industry blog showed a video, grainy, out of context, of Maya speaking Mandarin at a closed-door meeting. The caption read, "Whitaker's new multilingual star or just a pretty face." The clip focused on a single word, one she supposedly mispronounced, changing the nuance of the sentence. But the audio was distorted, the intonation off, spliced. Maya knew it had been altered. Grant knew it too. But the internet did not wait for facts. Comments poured in. "He is just a caterer with lipstick." Diversity stunt. "Can someone get her a dictionary?" Lena saw it first. She sat quietly at the kitchen table, tablet glowing in her lap. "Mommy," she said softly, "they are scared of you." Maya froze. Lena looked up, matter-of-factly. "Because you are better than them and you do not pretend." Maya wrapped her daughter in her arms. "I love how your brain works, you know that?" Lena giggled. "You told me being weird is our superpower." But the storm had only just begun. The next day, Maya was scheduled to present to the International Board, an intimidating group of billionaires, policy advisors, and foreign ministry liaisons. It was a full room, high-stakes pitch on global cultural strategy. She wore her best blazer, nerves steeled. The stakes were higher than ever. Halfway through her presentation, an older board member from Geneva interrupted. "Masnik Rivera," he said, voice syrupy with skepticism. "As someone with a catering background, how do you explain the concept of face in Eastern business etiquette without relying on cliché?" It was a trap. Everyone knew it. A culturally loaded question meant to corner her, reduce her. Grant shifted in his seat. His jaw tightened. He was about to intervene, but Maya raised one hand, stopping him. She smiled. "Thank you," she said evenly. "That is a wonderful question. Let me tell you a story." And then she launched into it. A personal account from years ago. When she was a student volunteer at a diplomatic event in Beijing, translating for a minor delegation. One of the guests lost face during a toast and stormed out. The night was collapsing. Maya, young and unnoticed, had simply offered the offended guest tea with both hands, eyes lowered, offering no words, just gesture. He returned to the table 15 minutes later. "Deal salvaged." In Mandarin, we often translate face as honor or dignity, she concluded, but I think of it as oxygen. We all need it, especially when we pretend we do not. Silence, then nods. Several board members leaned forward, genuinely engaged. Even the man who asked the question raised his brows, surprised. "Very well said." Grant looked at her differently then. Not with surprise, not with amusement, with respect, and something else, deeper, admiration. By the end of the presentation, Maya had not only survived, she had owned the room. The narrative changed. The next morning's headline in a respected global business magazine read, "From uniform to unstoppable, the multilingual mind behind Whitaker Global's comeback." In the office, people greeted her differently, more careful, more deferential. But Maya remained unchanged, sharp, kind, and unwilling to dull her edges to fit anyone's comfort. And Lena, who had drawn a superhero version of her mom wearing glasses and holding a laptop, taped it to Grant's office door. Underneath it, in crayon, it said, "Mom saves stuff." She was right. The lights dimmed in the grand ballroom of the Los Angeles World Forum. A massive screen flickered to life, showcasing the company's global partnerships, images of leaders shaking hands, contracts signed, milestones achieved. The final image was unexpected. Maya Rivera, in her modest blazer, standing between two dignitaries with a wireless mic in one hand and a folder in the other. Grant Whitaker took the stage. His voice, always calm and commanding, held a different weight tonight, something warmer. "When our team lost its voice in the middle of a $120 million deal," he began, "it was not our analysts, lawyers, or executives who saved it. It was someone who was not even on the guest list. A single mother, a part-time worker, a woman who did not just translate language, she translated trust." The crowd stilled. He went on, "Maya Rivera reminded us that connection is not about status. It is about clarity, courage, and sometimes saying the right words at the exact moment the world needs to hear them." Applause erupted. Not polite, not obligatory, genuine. Backstage, Maya stood frozen. Her hands were clenched around her ID badge. She had worn black slacks she found at a thrift shop and a blouse she had ironed 3 times that morning. Lena's drawing of a lion, tucked in her purse, gave her courage. She was not expecting what came next. An official from the company approached her after the speech, extending a sleek envelope. Inside, an offer. Lead interpreter and cross-cultural strategy consultant. Full salary, full benefits, full choice of schedule. Maya stared at the paper for a long moment before whispering, "Are you serious?" "We are," the woman replied, "but we also know it is your decision." Later that evening, in the quiet of a rooftop lounge, Grant found her standing alone, sipping a ginger ale, her heels kicked off beneath a lounge chair. "You did not answer the offer," he said. Maya glanced over at him. "I am thinking about it." "You are stalling." "Maybe I am, or maybe I am tired of people offering me things when they want something." "I do not want anything," Grant said. I am not asking as a billionaire. I am asking as a man who believes in what you do. Maya narrowed her eyes at him. You practice that line in the mirror? No, Eden, I just meant it. She smirked, then looked away, toward the stars, her hair catching the light breeze. You know, she said, I used to dream of being a professor, teaching languages, travel. Lena's dad said it was childish, said I would never make it work. And now I get to decide what the dream looks like on my terms. Grant reached into his coat and handed her a second envelope. What is this? An invite. Paris, Diplomatic Summit. We need someone who can speak French, Mandarin, and humanity. She opened it. Skyscraper pass, travel dates, hotel details. Maya raised a brow. Do I get my own security team or just the cool badge? Grant chuckled. You get both. Adelina? Already arranged. She will be with us. And he hesitated, almost shyly. I pulled some strings. She has been admitted to a gifted academy in Los Angeles. Full scholarship. They saw her portfolio. The robot that talks in riddles? They loved it. Maya blinked fast. Her voice was softer now. That little robot was built from cereal box parts and glue. She built it, Grant said, just like you built this life, out of nothing but grit and grace. There were no fireworks, no confetti, just two people on a quiet rooftop, discovering what it meant to be seen. Maya nodded slowly, tucking the envelope into her purse. I will come, she said, but I want it in writing. If Paris is boring, you owe me pastries, real ones, none of that sugar-free nonsense. He grinned. Deal? They clinked glasses, ginger ale and mineral water. The night moved on, but something in the air had shifted. Recognition, not just by the world, but between two people who had fought their way into each other's orbits. And neither had any intention of drifting away. The Parisian air was crisp, laced with jasmine from the embassy gardens and the sharp scent of espresso from nearby cafes. Within the vaulted halls of the Global Tech and Trade Summit, Maya Rivera walked with quiet authority, her badge clipped over a tailored navy dress, her steps purposeful, heels echoing over marble floors polished like mirrors. Gone were the catering trays and modest slacks. In their place, elegance, presence, and fluency in more than language. Inside the Grand Salon, international delegates murmured in their native tongues. A tension hung between two governments disputing a data clause. Maya stood between them, listening closely, not just to words, but to the rhythm, the tone, the intention. Then, gently, she intervened. What you meant, she said to the French official in his language, was protection of intellectual property, not ownership of production. Small difference, big fallout. A pause, nods, relief. Grant Whitaker stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, watching her with something more than admiration. It was trust. For 3 days straight, Maya led multilingual roundtables, rewrote cross-central terms in contract drafts, and caught errors no legal team had flagged. She did it all with grace, and the occasional flash of sarcasm that reminded people she had not forgotten where she came from. She earned the respect of scholars, technocrats, even a retired UN interpreter who simply said, "She is the real thing." On the second night, Grant invited her to a quiet walk along the Seine. The city glowed under antique street lamps. Vendors packed away their books. Boats floated by, casting rippling reflections. I keep expecting someone to tap my shoulder, Maya said softly, and say I do not belong here. Then I will stand behind you, Grant replied, and tap them back. She laughed, the sound carrying in the cool night air. They stopped at a bridge, leaning over the edge. Maya looked down into the water. When I was younger, she said, I wanted to be a voice for people who felt small. I just never thought I would end up doing it in a room full of presidents. You do not just speak for them, Grant said. You teach us how to listen. They stood in silence, the space between them charged and fragile. Later that evening, back at the Summit Hotel, Lena ran into the lounge where they sat reviewing notes. She hopped onto the couch and pointed at Grant. "You are still wearing your serious face." Grant looked up, confused. "My what?" "Your robot face. You look like a machine when you read emails." Maya chuckled. "She calls you Mom and the robot now. We are a team, apparently." Grant laughed for the first time that day. Really laughed. "Team Robot," he said, raising his coffee. "Team Robot." From that moment on, something shifted. He started smiling more. At meetings, on calls, even in morning briefings, his staff noticed. So did the media. One Summit photographer captured a candid moment. Maya explaining something to a diplomat, animated and bright while Grant watched her, a hint of warmth in his expression that had never made it onto a headline before. The caption on the photo, when it appeared in the Times of Europe, read, "The man behind the empire, the woman who changed the game." Behind closed doors, he began to seek her judgment more often, not just on language, but people, tone, strategy. He once asked, "How do you know when someone is lying?" Maya shrugged. "Their words do not match their eyes, or their silence." Grant nodded slowly. "I never learned that in business school." "No one teaches you," she said. "You learn it raising a daughter with a $20 grocery budget." In every room, on every panel, Maya did more than interpret. She illuminated. Her intuition became as valued as her vocabulary. By the end of the week, the whispers had changed. She was no longer that woman from the catering crew. She was now the woman who saved the deal twice and rewrote how this company speaks. And every time someone praised her in French, Mandarin, or English, Maya translated it to one thing in her mind. "You are seen now. You are finally seen." The golden sun filtered through the jacaranda trees, lining the street outside a renovated community center in downtown Oakland. Their violet blossoms dusted the sidewalk like soft confetti as Maya Rivera and Grant Whitaker strolled hand in hand, the laughter of children echoing from the playground behind them. The center's new glass doors bore her name etched in delicate script. Rivera Institute for Inclusive Interpretation. Beneath it, the motto she chose still made her breath catch in her throat. Every voice matters. Inside, classrooms buzzed with languages, Mandarin, Spanish, French, Swahili, Tagalog, spoken by bright-owned students, most of whom had never seen themselves as future diplomats or corporate interpreters before Maya. She had built this, not with legacy, wealth, or prestige, but with skill, with fire, with a daughter on her hip and no safety net. Lena, now 7 years old, darted ahead of them, her curly ponytail bouncing as she peppered the volunteers with questions in 3 languages. Switching mid-sentence, delighting in their wide-eyed confusion. "Mommy, do you think I can translate for the president one day?" she called back. Maya grinned. "Only if he can keep up with you." Grant chuckled beside her, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder. His once stern eyes had softened. The lines on his face no longer came from tension, but from smiling. "I have a question," he said, stopping her beneath the shade of the trees. She turned, tilting her head. "If it is about the difference between dialect and register again, I swear." He pulled something from his pocket. Not a ring, but a worn leather passport case. He opened it. Inside were 3 newly stamped pages. Tokyo, Paris. Tucked into the final page was a handwritten note that read, "Wherever you go, I go." For the first time in a long time, Maya was speechless. "Grant, I know I am not always easy, or romantic, or even readable," he said gently, "but this is not about grand gestures. It is about walking beside you, wherever the world leads." She blinked back tears. "You sure?" she whispered. "Because the world I walk into is loud, messy, and sometimes bilingual at breakfast." He leaned in. "Then I will start learning breakfast Mandarin." They kissed, soft, sweet, and certain. 2 months later, they stood on a rooftop garden overlooking the San Francisco Bay. Twinkle lights wrapped around wooden beams and succulents bloomed in handmade pots painted by Lena and her classmates. Maya wore an emerald green dress that caught the wind like silk waves. Her hair swept into a low bun, a single orchid tucked behind her ear. There were no ivory towers, no string quartets, just laughter, sunlight, and people from every walk of life. Interpreters, students, former clients, even 2 dignitaries from the Paris summit who insisted on flying in. Lena wore a flower crown and held a small microphone in her hands as she stepped onto a crate beside the cake table. Her speech came in 3 languages: flawless, funny, and from the heart. She used to make grilled cheese with an iron, she began. Now she teaches presidents how to listen, but she still burns toast. Laughter. He is the bravest person I know, and I guess he is okay too, she added, pointing at Grant. He is like a fancy robot with a secret heart. Cheers. Applause. Maya covered her mouth to hold in tears. The officiant declared them partners for life. No vows, just promises made with eyes and held hands. Later that year, a panel at Stanford titled "Breaking Barriers with Language and Love" invited Maya as the keynote speaker. The auditorium was packed. She stood at the podium in a tailored blazer and black slacks, hair cascading down her shoulders, a silver bracelet on her wrist that Lena had engraved herself. Say what matters. Behind her, a photo of her younger self flickered on the screen, holding Lena as a toddler, balancing a translation book and a bag of groceries. The contrast made her pause. I had no degree, she began. No funding, just talent, and a need to be heard. A beat. And then, one day, I was heard. Not because I had a title, but because I chose to speak anyway. She glanced toward the front row. Grant sat there, hands folded, smiling quietly. Lena leaned against him, now working on a sketch pad filled with comic versions of their lives. Maya with a cape, Grant with robot eyes, and herself in a star crown. Maya smiled. Because this was not just success. It was legacy. It was laughter over dinner, mispronounced foreign idioms corrected by a 7-year-old, and quiet nights reading side by side under a blanket. It was in every language she had ever known, love. And it had found her, not in a classroom or a resume, but in a moment of chaos. When she chose to stand up, sometimes, the world waits for the perfect resume, the perfect timing. But sometimes all it takes is one voice that refuses to stay silent. This was never just about language. It was about being seen, heard, loved, and rewriting the ending for those who were never given a beginning. Did this love story move your heart? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know. We read every single message. And do not forget to subscribe for more soul-stirring stories, emotional stories, and touching stories that remind us love always finds its way.